2009 world champion Jenson Button. And actually, Jenson, when we think about the way that Max won the season, quite redolent of the way you did it in 2009, wasn't it?
Kind of. He did have a win at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I struggled for that. But no, for me, this is a really impressive championship and a very impressive world championship, because he had to really fight for this one. Last year, that will be the season that goes down in history with the amount of wins he had that season. But this one, it's not been easy for him, and it's been lovely to see him get in amongst it and actually fight for this championship.
Yeah, he really did, didn't he? He had to roll his sleeves up because he was dominating early on, and then everybody else caught up, as I mentioned.
It's also just wild to think that, you know, a couple of years ago, Max Verstappen had no world titles to his name, and it feels like overnight he's woken up with 4 world titles. And as Jenson said, last year was smooth sailing and probably the easiest way he could have won a championship. But this year, he had a lot of odds against him, and honestly, I think it was impressive to see just what he extracted out of that car in moments where it felt that what he was extracting out of it was impossible. Plus, every time he had an on-track battle with Lando, who was obviously his closest rival, he got the better of him, and he proved that, you know, he was the man on top. And even if it wasn't race wins always towards the end, he did what he needed to do to secure it.
Well, so let's think about what happened off the track this year, because it was a fractured team at the start of the year. I think what impressed me most, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, is the way that he's just able to shut everything down. All the external noise, he ignores it and just gets on with what he's paid for.
Well, he seemed like the most professional.
Yeah.
And one of the youngest in the team. So, yeah, it is impressive. And that's one thing, one strength he does have. I think if you're going for your first world title, it's a little different. But when you've already won 3 world titles, he can be a bit more relaxed in himself. And we've seen that in his consistency through the year in terms of his personality. I am interested to see what happens now. 2 races to go. Do we see a different Max Verstappen? I don't know.
Do you think he's going to stay at Red Bull? Because, I mean, we were talking, weren't we, at the beginning part of the year when everything was going wrong, you know, is he going to stay? Is he going to want to move for 2026? But now he's secured 4. He'll be looking for a 5th next year. That's all quietened down.
For sure, I don't think he's going to be going anywhere until we know where these cars stand in 2026. It wouldn't make sense for him to go anywhere else until it's clear that moving somewhere else would make the right decision. And we've heard a lot of whispers about Mercedes potentially being the car to contend with in 2026. But until we see that, there's no real reason for him to make a move. That car is maybe not the most competitive at the moment, but Red Bull again now are starting to get a bit closer, and who knows what they have in store for next year. Let's wait and see.
Yeah, there you go. That's the scenes outside the garage yesterday, and we know that Max went on to enjoy himself in the Vegas evening, as did George Russell, because that Mercedes car, you're talking of domination, you know, it was a really strong drive from both of the drivers, and it looked a good car for once.
Yeah, Mercedes dominated every single session of the weekend. Obviously, with Lewis, he was quickest in most sessions, but it didn't quite come his way in qualifying, whereas it did for George. Pole position, lights to flag victory, and he didn't put a foot wrong, did he?
No, he didn't. Let's hear from both of them, shall we? Starting with Max Verstappen, who discussed that he didn't have it all his way this year.
I mean, they've all been very different, but I do think that this one was very rewarding at the end of the day. You know, it's not always been the easiest for us as a team, and yeah, to come away with that championship, I really felt it when I crossed the line in Vegas. I was like, it's done, you know. It's been challenging at times, but I'm very proud of how we handled everything.
I saw him in the bar at 9 in the morning when I was leaving to the airport.
Max, was this true? Or?
He didn't see me. He was, you know, nodding away. So I think Max is.
It was 5 p.m. somewhere. So.
Yeah, Max is, you know, pro racing driver, pro FIFA player, paddle player, drinker. You know, ticks all the boxes. Yeah, many talents.
Interesting, no, to see where McLaren and Ferrari were back in 2020, recovering from a bit of a crisis, the 2 most historic teams, let's say, and yeah, now we are back fighting for a world championship.
When you look over the course of the last 2 seasons, it's an incredible turnaround, and it would be capping off a good story and hopefully the start of long McLaren success.
On paper, it doesn't seem like it's going to be our strongest track. However, things can still turn our way, and we are super motivated to prove us wrong.
It will mean a lot to me, because for me, everything I do in a way is for them. It's for everyone that works back in the factory and here at the track side. You know, the team are like they're my biggest motivation. It's not self-happiness of winning, it's seeing the happiness of them. That's probably that's the thing that makes me happy.
Great team to be fighting with. I have a lot of respect for them, for the team, for everyone who's put together that project, all the leadership, and yeah, wish them all the best in this fight, but obviously with the motivation of trying to beat them.
It means a lot. So yes, of course, there's pressure. I think it's healthy pressure. But yeah, I'm confident that we can pull it off.
It would be a perfect way to end my career in Ferrari, or my last stint in Ferrari. So we're going to push all together, flat out, to make it happen, knowing that McLaren are favorites and they are 24 points ahead.
Well, Ferrari, the team that are fast improving, but if we go back to last year at this track, 47 points McLaren came away with a 1-3 in a sprint and a 2-3 on the Sunday, and Ferrari came away with 13 points. So you think this is a track that would suit them?
Yeah, you would. Obviously, a lot of changes in a year. But for me, it's not just the battle between these two that's interesting. You're going to have Mercedes in the mix, aren't you? So they're going to be taking points off of everyone, and that helps McLaren as well. So, yeah, you'd say the advantage is with McLaren around this track.
How big would it be for the team? Bearing in mind they've not done it since 1998. That's a long time to wait to be back at the top of the Constructors.
It has been a very long time. I think it's been since 2008 as well for Ferrari. So both teams, I think, equally desperate to win this championship. McLaren have done an incredible job, particularly since Miami, to turn their situation around. And they've been, you know, doing something that I would say is really impressive, the whole team. But at the same time, I think, you know, you look at the likes of Carlos Sainz leaving the team at the end of this year, probably not going to be in a position to win a world championship, whether it's as a driver or as a team member. You kind of want it for them as well. So let's wait and see what happens. But I do think that this track should theoretically suit McLaren better. They've got a car that's more adaptable than Ferrari, and with only one practice session today, that might go in their favour today.
A little bit of beef, as we said, between the two Ferrari drivers because of team orders and an issue there in Vegas. It seems like they've squared it away. They say they've got a great relationship off the track, but Carlos is gloves off at the moment, isn't he? Which is entertaining for everybody.
He is. The first sign of it for me was in Austin, when he was dive-bombing, you know, Charlotte every opportunity. But it's great to see them racing wheel to wheel. It is always frustrating as a driver when you're on the receiving end of your teammate getting past you or not quite listening to team orders. But no, it's nice they squared it away, and they're going to want to work together because, you know, where they finish isn't so important. It's for the team the next two races.
A quick one on next year. We might have 3 Brits in 3 different teams competing for the World Championship. You've got Lewis at Ferrari, Lando here, and George at Mercedes. That's going to be juicy.
It definitely will. I mean, it's been juicy anyway. This season, I think we've been so spoiled with so many different race winners. The competition's getting tighter and tighter as they do at the end of, you know, these regulations. It's just going to heat up the battle, and of course it's going to be great to see which of the Brits in which car is going to come out on top.
We're spread betting, aren't we, as Brits?
Yeah.
Well, as in 3 different
If I understood how to do it, I would. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we've got there's opportunities, no doubt about it, with the British hat on. But further down for 6th as well. Keep an eye on that back. Just 4 points separating those 3 teams in Haas, Alpine, and the RBs. A lot of money at stake, and there'll be a real focus for the last couple of races that to keep an eye on.
It's massive, and these 3 teams have been taking points every race. So 1 point here, 2 points there, apart from obviously Alpine, who got, you know, a blinder in Brazil. But I think from here on out, it's those 1 points. It's finishing 10th, finishing 9th. It makes a massive difference to their championship and their bonus at the end of the year. 3
young team principals. You've got to take your hat off to Komatsu, taking over from Gunter. Big personality, but he's come in from the technical side, and he seems to have really reshaped them quite well.
He has, and it's been very clear that a lot of the team members have been saying how much of a difference he's made in terms of putting people in the right positions, empowering people to do the right things to make this team go forward, and the results are showing that. Alpine as well, though, I have to say, started with probably one of the most dismal starts to a season for them.
Yeah.
And recently they've been consistently in the top 10, particularly Gasly, and, you know, Vegas we saw him top 3 in qualifying, which you would have thought at the beginning of the year that wouldn't be possible, but they're making it happen, and Williams are in there, RB are in there. Who's going to come on top?
It's all Flav, isn't it? Alpine, he comes back and everything gets sorted straight away. He has that Midas touch. OK, we talked about it, didn't we, in Vegas? 11th team coming onto the grid in 2026. It's been confirmed this week. GM and Cadillac are coming in. Here's Craig and Ted to discuss it.
Yes, thank you very much. Craig and I are down in the pit lane where the 11th team in 2026 will be. What's the details, Craig? What are they going to be called?
They will be Cadillac, that's what
Cadillac
we understand.
F1.
Yeah, they will, though, essentially be the Andretti bid. They'll be, I suppose, focused around the base that they've got at Silverstone, which now has 270, mostly experienced F1 staff. People like Nick Chester, the ex-Renault man there. Also a base in Indianapolis. They will be taking the engines initially from Ferrari, we know, and some parts from them. And actually, Ted, they've had a head start, haven't they? Because the 2026 rules are already out, and they have been able to build a car prototype which they've already tested in the Cologne wind tunnel. So in some senses, even though they're coming from a standing start, they've made maybe a sharper start for 2026 than some of their rivals.
Okay, but previously, some of Formula One's objections, such as there isn't the garage space to accommodate them. Clearly, they're here in Losail, Qatar, there is the garage space to accommodate them, but on some circuits it'll be tight. But all the other objections have just disappeared?
This is a turnaround which it is hard to explain in your own head, because on the face of it, not a lot seems to have changed. There have been significant boardroom changes both in F1 and in Andretti Global. Michael Andretti's gone there. Greg Maffei will step down at the end of the year. There was this Department of Justice investigation in America. That's the backdrop to all of this. Ultimately, though, and this is what significant individuals are explaining to me, it is the bigger role that GM are taking in all of this, which ultimately has persuaded F1 that they should allow this 11th team in. General Motors will build an engine for 2028. They're going to be the driving force. And because they're a big American automotive name, they will add value to the championship. That's the idea.
Okay, Craig, thank you very much. And there's been a very positive reaction to Cadillac F1 in the paddock.
Well, I think GM coming in is a big thing for the sport. It's a very big OEM, one of the biggest.
It's going to be my first time to race with 22 cars in F1, so more rivals, probably more action, more racing. So exciting times.
For my position, it's like, it's a great opportunity and a great chances that for next season that I'm not having a seat, so I can probably think about what the future will be, and trying to have an opportunity there.
There are lots of young drivers waiting for a place in Formula One in order to get there, and that will obviously give more opportunities to very talented young drivers that are dreaming to get into Formula One. So for that, this is a good thing, and cool to have two more cars on the grid.
Whatever they do, they have the capacity to do it well, and I'm sure they are gonna go at it full throttle and guns blazing. It's a big opportunity in 2026 with everyone kind of being reset on the new regulations. So it's a very exciting step for them and exciting thing for Formula One.
Yeah, I wish the best of luck. For a new team is never an easy task, but I think they will be well prepared and they have the right people. So welcome.
Well, when Haas came in 2016, they paid $350,000 for their entry fee. It looks like the anti-dilution fee, call it what you will, is going to be north of 400 million. That's what we're hearing for it. Overall, a couple of things. The U-turn, we understand that the guys touched upon it there, a lot perhaps to do with the investigation from the Department of Justice in the US. But it's turned on its heels very quickly. What's your reaction to it? Overwhelmingly positive?
I do think it's positive. I think we've always been on the side that, the more the merrier. They've obviously brought along a proposal that shows that they add value to the sport. I think that's what a lot of the teams were concerned about, that, diluting the funds ultimately would hurt the other teams. Now I think they're in a position where that's not going to be the case, and I think F1 was under a lot of pressure as well to not seem as if it was a closed shop. I mean, there are opportunities for other teams to enter the sport. They've brought along something that seems to be legit, and we shall see.
Ultimately, as Christian pointed out in his interview with us last weekend, he just said, who's going to pay for it? We're not going to pay for it. Someone's paying for it. Looks like it's going to be Liberty that are paying whatever they're going to give them a greater percentage of the prize money as well, so that they can split it more evenly and keep the pot the same kind of thing, or increase it slightly. What do you think, what are they going to bring? What would GM bring, do you think, to this eventually?
Well, I think the sport has grown massively in the States. So I think that's really good for the sport, but it's getting to a point where it's like, well, we need a competitive American driver, or we need a competitive OEM and American OEMs. And I think this is massive for the sport. Getting the interest of GM and Cadillac to come to Formula One is going to bring more eyes on the sport, more prospects, more sponsors in the future. Yeah, obviously the teams are looking at it now, or they're going to take a bit of the bit of the cake, which we don't quite like. But in the long term, this is great for the sport, because the sport has grown so much. It is going to level out, so I think this is the next step to give it a little kick.
Can I come straight back to you on Colton Herta, though? We think that he might be one of the drivers, an American driver, as we said, desperately needed, isn't it, because of the growth in that area?
Yeah, and he's extremely quick. You know, in everything he gets in, he's quick. In IndyCar, obviously, extremely quick. He was my teammate when we raced at Daytona earlier this year, and he just gets in and he's on it.
You think he'll succeed, do you?
Yes, I think he'll be quick from the word go. There's obviously a lot of learning, very different to IndyCar, but I think he's got the mindset.
And competition, obviously, on the other side of the garage, you know, Zhou Guan Yu's obviously trying to eye up that seat, so too K-Mag. There'll be a lot of people in there, but actually the theme seems to be, recently in Formula One, give the young guys a go. Someone from F2 potentially might have an eye. Okay.
Well, that was one of the positive things of adding another team, is creating more opportunity for young drivers to come through. But, you know, as some of the drivers were saying, bringing a new team into Formula One is a huge challenge in itself. So I think maybe initially it would be wise to have a very experienced driver in the seat to maybe help that team grow quickly. Whether that's Valtteri or, you know, whoever it may be, maybe even Danny Rick. I mean, he's popular in the American audience. He's out of a seat. Who knows who's going to take that seat? But I think, you know, initially it might be worth having at least one driver that's had a lot of experience in F1 in the seats.
Very quick one on Checo. What do we think is going to happen with him? Are they, you know, they're going to pay off the end of his contract and replace him? He's smiling today, but it's a really tough year for him.
It is, and for him to, you know, to come out here today and to put in a good result, it's difficult when your mind is, when you've had such a negative run of results. But if he comes out and has two magnificent races, beats Max Verstappen, he's got a really good chance of keeping his drive, because everyone just thinks of that last race in this sport. They really do. But if it continues like it has continued, I can't see him being here next year. He's not going to be here for his performance, is he?
Look, I think at some point you've got to ask the question, when is too little too late going to be the subject? But this weekend they are still within a fighting chance of that Constructors' title. So if he can get up there, who knows? Let's see what happens.
There we go. Novak Djokovic is here. There are a few celebrities here, actually, this weekend, as they do. Practice one is next. Don't go anywhere.